Hi, I'm Andrew Rudd. I'm a filmmaker from Ohio, and I showed a film at Salute Your Shorts a few years ago, and they asked me to come and talk to some of the filmmakers because we don't have audience talkbacks at the end of our screenings this year, which is a disappointment for filmmakers because hearing from your audience makes so much difference. So I tried to rack my brain thinking about all the different ways that audience members might come up with questions, and the film that we're about to talk about is such an exciting film, partly because it matches our experience in quarantine, but also because it's a really exciting voice of a new filmmaker. I'm so excited to get to interview you, Haohao Yan, about this film, this speech. I'm a speech teacher. That's my day job. So
Oh, really? That's so cool.
I came into this kind of, having, but in the end, like where your film took me was a really different journey than maybe I expected, and it's still a deeply resonant one, while also feeling like I got introduced to a world that I really didn't know anything about before.
Thank you.
So I am curious, like this film is, for a short film, so ambitious. It specifically, like, unlike many narratives that we're used to seeing in short films, you don't follow a single protagonist. You have at least three kind of protagonists, but their stories are so connected to each other. Can you talk about how this structure sort of inspired you, or where it came from for you?
Yeah, for sure. So the story actually, because it's based on my own experience. Actually, I started writing the Last Girl's story first, and during the development, I was very inspired by a lot of filmmakers who does this multi-character films, and also I start to realize that what's the most important thing of this film is the atmosphere, is the world that they live in. It plays a lot uh, throughout their personal journey. So as I just start writing, because it's based on my own memory as well, it just my friend's experience and the memory that I have, like a small thing that happened between me and my teacher, like everything just starts to to flesh out. And I was like, I didn't want to take out any of it. I kind of love all of it. So we went on a little bit unconventional route of taking three different stories, putting it together. But my way of seeing it is that even though it's three different journey, like everybody have their own difficulties to deal with, and they learn a complete different lesson. It's about, and it's during the same day, and it's kind of like a similar journey as why the title is called the speech, that they all unveil something or discover something that they think, it's kind of like an internal speech to themselves that will forever change their life.
I like that.
Thank you.
I also have to compliment you because, I mean, it's a kind of a privilege to get to watch the film and then think about it and think about getting to ask you questions. But I noticed that there are these, even beyond the three main characters, there are many other characters who
Mm-hmm.
have significant, like I felt so much resonance and empathy with the parents at the very
Oh,
beginning. Like you can imagine a whole feature-length film just about what's going on between them. It was a very convincing set of interactions and great performances by them. And then the teacher who is engaged to a man outside of the quarantine, but am I right that she has some kind of
yeah, you're
liaison
right.
with one of the other teachers?
Right.
So did these stories also come from like your memories, or were these secondary stories a little bit more invented?
The parents are pretty much based on my own parents. Of course,
Okay.
I wasn't able to see that side of the story because I was locked inside the school. But it's just based on their daily communication, and young parents when they have kids who are still young and they're new to the rule, and this whole world is changing. So it's kind of like they have to cope with their own world, their work, and also have to take care of this kid who, like, they feel like responsible of, and just try their very best. But still, it's like communication problems, and you're so far away from your kid, and like all that frustration plays into it. Yeah. The other part that you talk about was completely fictional.
But it was a great, I mean, so am I right that the teacher who catch it or who like is
Hmm.
very stern at the end, he's the one who says, go stand out there, no recess? That's the same
Yeah.
teacher who, I
Hmm.
thought so,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's just this, but it's like almost like an Easter egg. It's like a gift to us. Like if we're like really paying attention, we'll sort of see all these other stories that are woven together. It's really
Thank you.
lovely. So speaking of the world, you mentioned the world of the film, and I was, because I saw the AFI logo at the beginning of the
Hmm.
film, I sort of thought that it was produced in the United States, but I was
Yeah.
absolutely sure that it was shot in China, um, because like you did craft a world that felt so coherent to me, but it also didn't feel familiar at all to me. Like that,
Hmm.
there were many things about the school that just felt very different than the schools that I am aware of or grew up around. Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Sure. Thank you, first off. That was our goal, to make the world very not only convincing but also helps with the atmosphere. This kind of end of the world, everybody's locked inside and nobody knows what the future is. Kind of ominous feeling. And you're right, due to the AFI rules, we cannot go outside of the 30-mile zone to shoot. So everything has to happen in the United States, in Los Angeles. And that's like a difficulty that we knew from the beginning. So we started early with our pre-production location scouting, and the final result of the film is pieced together with seven different locations.
Seven.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. We tried to find, parts of the LA schools, and also, abandoned hospitals, like recreation areas, to fit into what my based on basically my memory and our research of the early 2000s, a Chinese school.
I mean, like it's astonishing to me that that's seven locations because that they did like the continuity of feeling was just so strong. I was utterly swept up in the process.
Thank you.
And
That's thanks to my production designer.
congratulations to your production designer. Really a wonderful. I mean, and obviously, like having all those school uniforms, there are just so many elements of the design, the production design of the film that were just delightful. But they were delightful because they were so coherent and they were never flashy or like it never felt
Mhm.
like, oh, they're showing off. I just felt I believed it. It almost felt documentary in terms of its realist
Thank you.
construction. So thank you. And I'm curious about working with so many children. Like,
Yeah.
first of all, how was that? And secondly, how long did you have to shoot all those sequences, especially with so many kids?
Um, the experience itself was fascinating. I loved working with kids. The rehearsals and casting, of course, was the most headache part.
Mhm.
Uh, being on getting things done, more or less. And yes, having so many kids on set every single day is very tiring and takes a lot of yelling, and you just organizing and keeping them focused and all that kind of stuff. But what I really love with working with kids is that they almost can't hide, because a lot of the kids we cast, majority of them are non-actors. They've never had an acting experience, and they've never been in front of a camera. And very luckily, we had a very small camera on set, and I think that helped not distract them from their own world. And we did spend a lot of time rehearsing, was just pretty much getting to know each other and letting them be friends with each other. Because I feel like when the kids are comfortable with each other, then it helps a lot, because they've never been out being, they don't have to be out there by themselves. They're always out there with each other. So that helped a lot. Also, it really helped me to get to know them and know their family before we go into the shoot. I kind of went back and rewrite their characters a little bit based on their own personality. And I think that really, really helped me in terms of keeping the characters real, and keeping, some little things they like to do as a person. I think that plays out really well. That brings out the reality feeling of the film. And yeah.
Great. Um, I have so many questions that I can't, I have to remember what all the important ones are. So, um, oh, did I ask how long your shoot,
Oh,
the entire shoot?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to
No,
answer.
that's okay.
It's in total 6 days of
Oh.
production, and we broke it down to the 2 weekends because the kids still have to go to school during the week.
Mhm.
And we ended up having another day of reshoot after we finished the principal shoot, and that's kind of very lucky, and it's part of the AFI rules as well, and I think it really helped.
That's an incredibly like compressed time frame for a
Yeah.
film. That I mean, with this many things happening, I, I wanted to remember to compliment you on one more of those secondary stories that I loved, and that was the
Hmm.
story of the mother who was working in the office and whose son she couldn't see, and that
Uh,
um, the way that you are revealing like all these layers of meaning that are so obviously resonant to many of us right now and that you couldn't have expected because of when you shot
no.
this. But I mean, that was just another moment where the sort of fully fleshed out imagination of how this world, because like you said, this is from your memory, but like you didn't have the memories of being a parent, but you
No.
still like gave us an adult way into this world as well as a childhood
Mhm.
way.
Thank you. Thank you for picking up all the like hidden stuff that I tried to bury.
Oh, it was buried perfectly, just close enough to the surface for us. I'm curious about, so I'm a person who loves plays and books and movies and music that invite us to return to to
Mhm.
things in our past. And I know that as a filmmaker, like when I return to something from my past, like I always end up seeing things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So the psychotherapist Jung like calls it active imagination, where we're like actually kind of working out our own unconscious. I'm curious if you had an experience like that at all as an artist and as a human, where like being able to kind of approach, so it's almost like time travel that you got to although I know the technical aspects of being on set are different, but I'm wondering if any of that sort of feeling or experience or emotion happened to you.
Yeah, of course. Actually, that's where the story originate from. I have this memory of me as a kid being chosen to deliver my first speech in front of the whole school. And I just lost my words on the stage, and I had no idea what happened to me. I kind of was like frozen on the spot, and I can hear my teacher talking to me, but my body couldn't move. And I almost had this when I revisited, I feel like I almost had this enlightenment moment as a kid to realize that none of this matters to my life. And I just chose to walk off. That's like my modern interpretation. Like nowadays, looking back, that's kind of my interpretation. But it's a moment that always come back to me in my adult life, and I still don't know what I was thinking exactly and what actually happened. So the whole film was kind of like a revisit of that world and what has led to this girl to come to this end, and who she's become basically afterwards, because this is definitely like a significant event in her life.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad you told that story in that way because you answered some of my other questions. Um, I should also compliment the performances of your actresses, those
Thank
especially
you.
those three young actresses. Oh my goodness, they were so compelling. What's your directing style like with them on set? Like how much did you interact during the performances, or are you kind of a I sit at the sidelines, Kiarostami style director? Um, how did that work for you?
We had like a huge casting process, so during which I saw a lot of different ways of interpretation of the characters. Because the kids, they just bring in themselves and they say your lines, of course, but they're still themselves, which I really appreciate. So a lot of it, especially like the characters, the characteristics, like the energy came from the actors. I don't think I've done a lot of I only tell them like at this point, you probably should stand here because the camera is gonna see you
Right,
here, and
right.
also like look this way, look that way, like that kind of basic stuff. But I want them to be able to maintain themselves. That actually helps me, I think, because I like being a child was like year too long ago, you know.
Right.
So I was hoping that they can help me, especially on set, to bring the energy out. Yeah.
I love that. I think that really happened. The shot that you hold at the end, and that I won't say what it is in case people haven't watched this film yet. You must go watch this film, everybody. Please stop watching us and watch the film, then come back. Because I just thought like the amount of time and the camera focal length, all those things were so like kind of a courageous directorial choice but it worked so profoundly. Like I sort of didn't even understand how deeply I was feeling with that character until that sequence, which like that's just such a gift for an audience member, and just a delight. So thank you. I also noticed, I watched through the credits, of course, and I noticed that you did a nice job of procuring many donors for your film, so many donors for your film. So I'm wondering if you can talk, I mean, that for all the filmmakers who are watching, that hearing about that process is so helpful. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that process. And then I have a second follow-up question about one of your mysterious donors.
Okay, cool. So yeah, it was a school project. So it was our thesis film. All of my teammates are AFI students as well. So it was a huge project and probably the biggest project I've ever did in terms of budget, because there was one reason that the school has very strict rules about following the union laws and everything. So making sure that besides us, like we're all volunteers, but everybody else who works professionally are getting paid professionally. And we follow all the union hours, the actors all follow the SAG rules and stuff. So that all brings up the budget by a lot, which I think as an independent filmmaker, probably wouldn't have to go through that. But I'm very grateful that we have this opportunity, because it also was a learning experience for us to handle, for example, like 60 people on set at a time. And it's just, just the number of people is like, it's like something to deal with. We did a year ahead of the production, we did crowdfunding. And that mostly was from my friends and families, our teammates, friends and families, some inside China, some in the US. So it was like little by little, like $10, $20, but it adds up. Because I'm telling a very personal story, actually, a lot of my childhood friends and their families donated to me as well, because I'm kind of telling their stories as well. I was trying to market it as, bring our childhood stories to the screen, something like that. So that community, I really appreciate their help, and I hope they like the end project, because it's just a film about their life. Besides that, the school does have a little bit budget provided to us. Of course, that came straight from our tuition, but it's a nice gesture that we have some starting budget to begin with. That also really helped. And after that, it's just being a student, we're very lucky to get all these discounts from, the camera store, Kodak, because we shot on film, and just a lot of organizations and very kind people, basically. Yeah.
Right. That's wonderful. So I'm going to follow up my question. So one of your, and they kind of stood out because I couldn't read most of the Chinese characters, but one of your donors identified as "don't talk anymore." Do you know anything about that story? Or
so because we did a crowdfunding, which involved a lot of people on the internet, so it was hard to identify who's who, and because a lot of people use their like internet name. Yes, so that's probably from one of those kind donor who use like an internet name, who think it's cool, and just because we ask everybody to put down their legal name so we can say thank you and give them proper credits. But the list was too long, and people think they'd rather be called that way. Then we're like, fine, yeah, of course. So that's why we ended up having like weird nicknames and stuff in our credit list.
Well, so here's the theory that I came up with when I read that, and this is an example of a fan reading things into your film. But I am curious about my theory, even though like it's probably not supported with that name. But as soon as I read that, I was like, oh, that decision that Jen makes at the end is such a political decision. And you acknowledged that a minute ago, that it in the moment, you know, back then, it may not have felt like clearly that to you, but in returning to it, it felt like a kind of decision like that. And it does, you know, of course, as we're going through this right now, and we hear people just talking endlessly about, you know, about legal implications of quarantine, about, you know, all the possibilities of finding a cure, like all these, like it all seems so hypothetical. And then like to think about that in tandem with the speech that she keeps rehearsing, right? She's rehearsing a speech about an established leader in her culture that everyone admires and trying to like inspire people with it. But suddenly I remembered what it felt like the first time that and probably for me, it didn't happen until I was an adolescent, when I was rehearsing something that I had been taught to believe in. And then I was like, oh, but I don't believe this anymore. I'm speaking about it in a public way. This is like this is a moment that requires some kind of response. Am I reading too much into your film?
No, I think that's exactly what happened. I mean, I don't have as much as public speaking experience probably as you do, but when you're standing in front of the crowd, I kind of force you to look into yourself on the stage because it's so quiet and only you are speaking. So I think even though it's like a public space and a public event, I feel like it almost could be the most intimate moment with yourself. So it was bizarre, but it was very interesting.
Well, and to me, like what Zhen's doing is she's walking around rehearsing, and she hears her peers talking about her in the bathroom stall, and she like hears her teacher talk about this kind of like expectation that she has. And then she goes into this other room and sees her other peers being treated very sharply and rudely by a teacher who we already know is breaking the rules himself. And then the teacher turns to her and like gives her a moment of privilege. And then she's standing up there, and the reverse angle that you take of her peers just being utterly disinterested in this like extremely like that was such an important and profound kind of like moment in the film. Like I'm not coming up with
Thank
crazy
you.
theories.
Thank you. No. Thank you for your reading. You know, it's all correct. Like most of it is just my own experience. I didn't think too much about it. Like when I do those speeches and I go back to my friends, nobody ever cares. Like they all know it's like a job that you have to do, and you're probably chosen because you're a cute kid, or you know, whatever the reason that the teacher found useful. So it's only like when I grew up that I look back to it, I realized all those things that we did, either meaningful or meaningless, like kind of shapes who you are right now. So cool.
I also thought that at that moment in the film when she addresses all these role models we have our parents and our teachers and our peers, like the exact line was beautiful and brilliant because it kind of collapsed the distance between you now and you then. Like we immediately think, oh, like our unforgettable childhood from our unforgettable childhood, and like we suddenly think, oh, this is a moment that connects what's happening right now in this film to like what we're experiencing in returning to our own unforgettable childhood in whatever small ways that the film invites us to do that. It was just such a perfectly crafted line.
Thank you.
I feel like I had one more big question, but I know that I have this question. I want to know what you're going to be doing next. I can't wait to follow your future work. And I also like to invite filmmakers, if you have a place where you want your fans to start following you, like if you're an Instagrammer or a Tweeter or a Facebook or whatever where you want your fans to follow, tell us, because I want your fans to start following you. But also, what are your next projects? How do you hope to sort of move forward with your film career?
Okay, my Facebook is Haohao Yan. That's it. And then my Instagram is also Haohao, I think __ Yan, which you type my name, it'll easily find. And thank you. So I'm developing my first feature at the moment. and I'm in the middle of a short program of in a lab right now that I hope that we can start the production very soon. But we sort of have to wait and see the situation of LA and how things develops from now. But this feature project that I'm working on right now, it's also based on my own experience, kind of like the speech kind of a Chinese kids community, but takes place a couple years later. When I was when I was 12, I got sent by my parents to Glendale, California, as a exchange student with 40 other Chinese kids. And we spent a year here in Glendale in a Christian school. So the story kind of follows this group of kids and their life. And because, you know, they're entering their puberty at the age of 12, they're far away from their parents, far away from the control. It's their first time actually experiencing what freedom is. That, you know, that's what they think freedom is. And just things happens and everybody are forced to change. And we kind of look into the teachers as well, because we had 4 Chinese teachers who came with us. And of course, we're looking at, you know, these kids have to fit into the American school at the same time. They have to fit in with their own people, because you live with all the other kids in the dorm in like 2 townhouses. So that experience, like SARS, was a big chapter of my life. I think I keep going back to. So I just want to look into it more. And it's a coming of age story. And I want to bring to my audience again this kind of community, how do you say, collective living as a young adult, and how it influenced your life.
And that does remind me of one of the questions that I wanted to ask about. Like, I am very interested in when we watch movies that record ways that people live in other places. Like, what are the gifts that those kind of bring to us from those other places? And it does seem like maybe I'm asking you, like, it does feel like your film has a more poignant sense of collective good, as opposed to individual good. I know that is sort of historically a difference between Chinese culture and Western American culture. Is that something that you're like aware of, that you wanted to make a comment on?
I think it's pretty much, I only came to this realization after I've done a couple work and like writing and also in filmmaking. And I look back to it and I think it's probably because this is the way I grew up. I always grew up with people in my own age, because I went to a boarding school since my kindergarten all the way to high school. And after high school, I came to the US. So I was never very close to my original family, which is not necessarily a typical case for Asian families. Normally, Asian families are very close to each other. But I think this specific growing experience led me to more interest into portraying a group of people in a similar age and how they fit in or not fit in with each other, and how they grow with each other. And also, you know, as a team, they kind of are stronger than themselves. And, you know, it's like kids when 20 of them together, they're like unbelievably forceful. There's nothing you can do with them. They're the god, that kind of thing. And I just really, because now I'm an individual again. I'm not with my friends 24 hours anymore. I don't live with them anymore. So I kind of, it's my own nostalgic feeling of wanting to go back to those times where I'm always invincible, because I have a lot of me. I have all of them. So I am very inspired, like you mentioned, works from Kiarostami and all those directors who are very realistic, and also focus not only on one character, despite that their movie might, you know, have it's a single character narrative, but you kind of are allowed to look around a little bit inside the movie to see how this world works, and how these people in this world live, basically.
Well, I'm so excited to see your film. I know it's going to be a little while until you are able to shoot it, but again, it's just been a gift to talk to you about this film and get to watch this film. And I really hope that a lot of people are able to see it, even though film festivals aren't what they used to be right now.
Right.
I hope that you're able to show it around the world. That's the one, I'm worried that our timing will cut off, but so far it
Okay.
doesn't seem to be. And I don't want to keep you too long. Are you able to show the film to your many supporters in China? Are you?
Yeah. Yeah, I send them my like whenever I have like cut, I just send it to my friends right
Okay,
away, and
good.
it's interesting to hear their feedbacks. But a film is a film, so
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end our conversation now.